Hey, what's up, guys? In my last video, I talked a little bit about what T-War is and how it works, the very basic mechanics, and today I'm going to go over some general strategy and some things you really want to focus on in T-Wars. So we're going to go ahead and start it off in the open world. Once I leave. So there are a few things to keep in mind, and we're going to start with the open world and work our way in to the cities and the villages. So on the open world, one thing you should be aware of is the pathing. So sometimes the pathing will take you to weird directions or all the way around. Another thing to keep in mind is also if you don't own a fort or it's blocking your path, you're going to have to go all the way around if the access rights are denied. Fortunately for us, we own the fort right here, so I can just go through it. But if we didn't, I think last T-War was owned by a different faction house. So before, in order to get here, you would have had to go all the way around to Haojin and through and back. So some things to keep in mind is on the open world, there's several lines. So the way it works is you can switch to a line every few minutes. One thing to keep in mind is you definitely want scouts, right? So if you're defending or you're trying to see numbers on the outside, you want to spread out across all these different lines to get an accurate count of who's moving where, and especially for fielding. Now, when it comes to fielding, you can only see the people on the same line as you, right? So if there was an enemy right here and he was on line 1, I could tag him. But the cool thing is, once you tag a player and you pursue them, the battle animation on the open world will be open to all the lines. So it doesn't matter who starts the pursuit or from what line, it'll be shown across all lines in the open world. The other thing is influence. I think I covered it a little bit in the last video, but we're going to go more in depth with it. So the cohort deck will actually give 300 influence points, which will give them a huge boost. So if another house declares on the same city that cohorts did, they're going to have to take a few nodes or placed an outpost or a field camp in order to bump that influence up. A field camp will cost you 1,000 prestige, which is another thing to keep in mind. And an outpost, which will give you more influence, a lot of it, costs 2,000 prestige. So in order to get all these declarations in, place the field camps, make sure you're earning prestige by doing those fief quests and your dailies and weeklies. Now, when it comes to attacking a city or village, more so a city, you're going to need artillery. Lots of artillery in these battles, mainly mortars and culverins, and siege ballistas are pretty good too to focus on the heroes. T-Wars is a completely different playstyle than Sieges. You're really focused on killing the heroes and not so much the units. Once you kill the heroes, they're knocked out of the game. So you definitely want to be focusing on killing them with your teammates. When it comes to influence, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. I glazed over it. When it comes to influence, the way to do it is you fight over these nodes and you'll get influence for ruling house. Now, ruling house has a timer on it. So say cohorts deck, they have the 300 influence. They're going to have ruling house for, I believe, 3 minutes. And even if you take these nodes and get more influence than them, they're going to stay at ruling house until that timer is up and it switches you over. Now, auto decks are interesting because if you lose a city, you're automatically declared for it and you have a chance to go back in and get it back. I'm just going to go ahead and pitch a camp right here. When it comes to fielding in the open world, the best units for it is cav, right? So the purpose of fielding is if they're attacking your city and say this is ours and we're defending it, you definitely want to be on the inside with the majority of your players, the people who are going to be in the fight actually defending. And they can join the battle from inside the city. So when it gets attacked, you'll see the battle icon. You'll get a join battle message, just like you would if you click on it on the open world on the left-hand side of your screen while you're on the inside. When it comes to fielding and defending that city, though, You want to go out and tag as many players as you can with cavalry and run them over, take their artillery out of their wagons so they're coming in weaker, or they get that 2-minute timer. Whenever you lose a field battle, you'll take some damage for your units depending on how much you lost. If they just cap you out and you didn't lose any, you'll take a 3% damage across the board and you'll have to heal them. Or of course, if they wipe your troop, you're going to have to go to an independent or something you own and heal them up there. But you're really just trying to buy time and grab these numbers off the attacking force when you're out in the open world and fielding. And again, horses are the best for that. So it's going to be your winged hussars, maybe your Rattan Rangers if you're really trying to play cheeky and move around. You're really trying to pull off the numbers. The other thing is, if they're serious about this attack, they're going to place a field camp. Now, a field camp will give them access to trebuchets and siege engines, although those two big artillery pieces will cost them prestige. But they can also buy artillery from that camp and heal their units and get food they need for the attack. So if they start building a field camp, it's important to have a reserve force ready to take it out, or at least try to take it out. You can fight over it like it's a normal city, 15 on 15 with mustering, and it'll just plop up anywhere on the open world. And again, that costs you 1,000 prestige. Now, when it comes to the two different types of fights, villages and cities and forts are pretty much the same. It's going to be your brawler units, it's going to be heavy infantry, and some cav in there to break it up, and lots of artillery. Villages are a different playstyle though. So it's normally going to be a heck of a lot of cav, 15 on 15 cav for the most part. You're not really going to see a whole lot of infantry depending on the clan and what their players have. It's going to be mostly cavalry. So Hwachas are the best for that. And if you don't have golden era horses that you can play with, the next best thing is pikes or direct range. That'll be your gunners or your pavis. Archers don't really have a place in field battles or T-Wars. If you're really good with them, maybe, depending on the map, but most of the time I wouldn't bother bringing them at all. And I believe most shot callers and clans will agree with this. They just take up a slot in the battle where you can be used more effectively, bringing those pikes or the shield or a specialty unit like flamers or falconettis. Now when it comes to the battle itself, you can attack with 15 on 15 and have mustering in reserve. Now when you're in the reserve, there's going to be an inner queue and an outer queue. So the outer queue, you can't really see what's going on in the battle, but when you're on the inner queue, it's important to go in that Z mode and to press tab, see what's going on the map, so when you spawn in, you kind of have an idea what's going on. And also you're able to give your team some callouts while you're in the Discord channel with them on something they may not see because they're focused on the battle themselves. And when it comes to strategy itself, the best advice I can give you is to remain calm. Now, some of these battles are going to be hectic. They're going to be crazy. Chaos, artillery here, left and right. The shot caller's telling you to push, 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 and go, go, go. The most important thing you can do is not panic. Just stay calm. Take that extra second. Think things through on what you're doing. And don't rush in there and just die and yeet your unit. Now, the only exception to that is if you're capping a point or you're really trying to clear it fast, then go ahead and just yeet yourself in there, right? If you're a short sword, I mean, try to get your unit to follow you, but pop your iron sides, go belly flop, and just brawl it out. There are very few times when just rushing in there head on without your units or without your team is going to be effective. Another thing to keep in mind too is whenever you're playing a melee class, something I don't see too often in T-Wars is most melee classes have a stun every 15 seconds. What you can do is mid-combat, you take a dodge, right? You roll back or whatever it is, you hop on your horse, and you immediately dismount with your Q button. What that'll do is actually give you an extra stun. It knocks them down on the ground, and it gives you the ability to burst them down with whatever DPS abilities you have. So hopping on your horse every 15 seconds, getting that extra knockdown in is massive in T-Wars. I don't see it utilized very often. The meta classes you're going to want to play in these battles are going to be Maul, it's going to be Musket, and it's going to be Short Sword. There are a few other classes that do really well depending on their role, but they're more niche. right? The majority of your team, you're going to want those 3 classes if you're playing infantry or a ranged unit. When it comes to cavalry, 2 of the best classes for cavalry are going to be pike and spear. So if you're rocking double cav, or even if you just have one, that's definitely the weapon you want to be playing while using that unit. Some weapons that really don't do well, depending on the people. Again, if you're really good with a weapon, there's probably a niche role for you somewhere, but for the most part, longbows don't do too well, nadachis fall off, short bows aren't that good, classes like that, compared to the things you can do with a short sword, the tankiness where they can't heal you, they can't knock you out, the giant belly flop, the CC, or the musket CC, and burst damage from range, or even the maul, just the massive DPS and able to throw someone off of these walls as they're trying to get up and climb the ladders. So compared to some of these weapons, they're just not that good. Dual Blades has a very niche role with the invis. It's great for getting behind enemy lines and going to that other point that they're not on, like X point. If no one's there defending it, they're pushing your home point, go invis, try and backcap that X. It'll definitely draw a few players. Your biggest resource in T-Wars is going to be time, whether you're on defense or attack, so you got to keep that in mind. And we're going to go into some units here. Well, let me enter the town first. So again, keep that in mind, right? The time is your biggest resource. Every 15 seconds you can get on your horse and dismount, get that extra knockdown in, and don't panic, right? Some advice I can give for shot callers is try and pull the names of people. Try to ping, right? Tab left, tab right, and north and south are always going to be the callouts you're going to hear in these battles. Well, I'm going to wait to load in, then I'll show you guys what I mean. So tab left and tab right is always based off the minimap, right? So even though I'm facing backwards on this minimap right now, when I say tab left or left, it doesn't mean on my left. It means based off the minimap, right? So they're either going to use cardinal directions like east, west, south, and north, or the tab. I think tab right and tab left is the easiest to do, and everyone knows what it means, right? You'll have that minimap on your bar when you're in battle. It's really easy to pick up and know where they're coming from or what your shot caller is trying to convey to you. If you're a shot caller, definitely grab out the names of people, right? Focused heroes. Call out a hero that's really low. Sometimes people don't see it. You definitely get tunnel vision in these fights. I know for sure. So those are some important things to keep in mind. And let's go ahead and get into some units here. So, I gotta repair some kits. This is Season 8, so I imagine this will be outdated in a while. In a week from now, Iron Reapers are getting a rework, so we'll see what that looks like. But the meta right now is definitely Imp Pikes for counter cavalry. They'll stop that cav charge. Fortibraccios around a wall or on a point will stop them as well and do high amounts of damage. When it comes to your shield units, I think Stalwarts really shine here because they're able to push and brawl, and they generally do a lot more damage than your Imperial Spear Guard. And they're just more versatile, especially with the new purple doctrines they added. They can be as tanky as the base Imperial Spearmen and walk away fine. Imperials aren't bad, but these guys are just pure tanks, right? So they don't die, but they don't really do a whole lot of damage, and they're really slow. Depending on the map, speed is definitely something to keep in mind. The border fort I'm on right now, your spawns are very far away, so you definitely don't want to be rocking a whole lot of slow troops because it's going to take you a long time to get to that battle, get to that front line or the point, whatever you need to cover here. And when attacking, one of the most important things you can do is normally when you capture an X point, you'll get a new spawn. Make sure you're clicking that new spawn so it'll pop up right below it as a little helmet icon. Don't spawn in Zimbabwe as my shot caller will often say. Zimbabwe means just all the way in the back of the map and nowhere. Make sure you're spawning forward and getting closer to the battle. Anything you can do in this to save you time is definitely something you want to be doing because it's huge in T-Wars. Time is your biggest variable and your biggest resource. Back to the units. Pavis are really good for a ranged unit counter cav with the stun they have on their Batan bolts. If you get double shot, you're mowing down everything. Imperial Arquebusiers really do that DPS with their volleys, so getting them set up down a hallway or an alleyway and letting loose with them is definitely the way to go. I recommend going top line if you're going to be doing city fights because of the break block status. It will really help you break up those shield units. The cav you're going to want to be using is definitely your monastics or your Laos or your Hussars. If you are rocking 3 purples, you don't have the leadership for them, having your Armiger Lancers as a back pocket charge are really good. They're the best purple cavalry in the game right now, and they're really effective. Now let's talk about specialty units. So specialty units are something that aren't very common. They're kind of hard to use, and you really need practice with them. That's going to be your Flamers right here, your Falconetti, and maybe even your Shield Maidens. So let's get into it. So the Flamethrowers, what I would recommend is definitely going top line. You want to increase the amount of damage and the fire rate on their Firestorm. If you put them up around the corner to hold a point, they, I guess cleave is the best way through it. Pierce is the word I want to use here. They pierce through a lot of enemies. They don't do a lot of damage, but the advantage of them is whatever they hit, they're CCing. You'll get into a little fire animation. You can't really move or do anything about it. So having your flamethrowers on your point does massive amounts when it comes to CC and damage. Falconettis are fantastic for countering their artillery and their siege towers that they're going to put up, and also aiming it at a giant brawl. I know they're Falconetti gunners, they're like mini cannons, but they actually don't do any team damage, so they'll only hit enemy units. So if you see a giant brawl, you can bring them, just aim in that giant blob, and you'll rack up a lot of kills and get the knockdowns. Whenever a unit gets hit by them, it does massive damage and it knocks them down. You just got to be careful about the ammo supply on these 2 units because they are relatively low depending on which line you go. I personally went top line for the accuracy, so this playstyle for this unit is going to be a little more long range, more snipery, right? You set it up in the back, try to protect them. The bottom line is valuable though, and is doable. It's more of a shotgun Falconetti. It gives you the more ammo, it gives you some extra soldiers, but no accuracy. So that's just something you carry with you to the front line, you shove them in, and you break up whatever formations they have on the point that you're trying to push through. Medaus are the new unit we've been seeing a lot. They are fantastic. They're a weird shock troop and pike hybrid. Their brace is incredible against cavalry, and they do a lot of damage with their abilities. The combo you want to do for them is 2, 3, and 2. What that will allow you to do is constantly slap them with whatever animations they have. It'll give you massive DPS and should wipe anything you're coming in contact with. While those are down, or if you're setting up a defensive position, you definitely want to use the Medao defense. It's a really good brace, and they are slow, so I put a sprint doctrine on them. And definitely recommend bottom line for the tankiness. Top line improves their damage, but I tried both, and I really wasn't all that impressed with it. Let's go into Shield Maidens. Shield Maidens are a fast, shielded troop that can be used as either a shock or a shield wall. And they have spear, and they also have a sword. Now, the only thing to keep in mind is they have a lot of abilities, so cycling between these requires a lot of microing. So definitely be aware of that. Get your practice in. This isn't a unit you can just unlock and bring to T-Wars and be effective. They require a decent amount of skill and microing. But they are really fun, and you can use, I don't have any on, but you can use epic spear doctrines that you would normally put on shields. You can apply all of them to this unit, so it can make their block really tanky and make them take a lot of damage. And their shield wall is fantastic once you do that. Some other units that are purples, right? Berserkers are really great for climbing walls. ASAPs are a really good shock troop. You really don't see a whole lot of archers. I wouldn't recommend bringing them to T-Wars along with any other purple cav. And I wouldn't use anything lower than a purple. So a lot of times you'll have the extra leadership to load an extra unit in there. It depends on what you're doing, right? So if you have 15 people in the fight to start and you have some mustering, don't bring out that third unit that you have, right? Don't waste time going to the supply point. Just dive in and suicide you and your troops so you can get someone else in with that golden arrow, with that purple unit. And that's going to be much more effective in a fight than your prefecture guard or your wolves or whatever you brought. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. Now, when it comes to units, I don't like bringing a lot of the same type of unit. I would keep your warband versatile. I would do like shields, pikes, and if I have the room, lancers, right? If I'm rocking all three purples, and I'll give you a lot of options to choose from depending on what's going on in the battle. Now, the role of group lead is very important, but not really that much. The group lead's really just there to make sure everyone's in the same place, that you're not bringing anything weird to battle, or you're bringing the right troops. Group lead can see your warband out on the open world. There'll be a button at the bottom of your screen, and you can check you and your player's warband. The group leads there, depending on your organization and your house, are really just there to make sure that you're in the right place. You're not bringing anything weird like rat and marksmen, or the incendiary archers. And just checking to make sure you got everything you got. Now, when carrying artillery on the open world, I would always recommend that it is bound artillery. Bound artillery cannot be taken from your wagon when you get fielded. So it definitely is a huge advantage compared to just bringing a lot of unbound stuff that, if you get tagged in the open field, can be taken from you. That'll really hurt you when you load into these battles. And again, important mechanics to keep in mind is when you're on an X point and they start capping it, once that ring closes, it'll auto cap. So you don't need to stay on it if you're in an honor race. But in order to take it back from the enemy team, if they're capping, you have to wipe all the heroes and the units off that point if you want to try and recapture it. So definitely keep that in mind. It's an important mechanic. Other than that, just be aware, check your surroundings. I always recommend tab, right, or pressing Z every now and then just to see what's going on, getting those horse stuns in, and bringing the right units. There's plenty of advice. You can always ask higher level people what units you should be going for and what veterancy lines. I'm not really going to go into that all too much because there's a whole lot of information out there on that. This is just really what you want to be doing in these battles and what you're looking for. I think that'll be about it. I hope that gives you guys some idea of what to do, a base overview of how you want to be playing, and I'll see you guys next time.